there's a lot going on across the country we've been talking about with regards to the protests and rallies and people who are just angry in some cases, frustrated, understandably so, when their livelihoods are being set aside when it comes to these protests. And in some cases, by the way, protesters are frustrated because their gun rights, constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms, seems to be under siege in certain parts of the country. So let's talk a little bit about a variety of different aspects to this issue and the current state of the right to keep and bear arms here in the United States of America with the Director of Outreach for Gun Owners of America. Antonia Okafor joins us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Antonia, welcome. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Good to be on.
So how are you doing amidst everything, first of all?
Oh, man. Well, it's kind of boring just staying at home most of the time. So there's definitely that. But unfortunately, on the gun control side of things, they are definitely using this as an opportunity to implement as much gun control and restrictions as possible. A lot of it just blatantly unconstitutional. So yeah, that's kind of like what we're doing on the GOA front right now, is combating a lot of that gun control.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. But first, one thing I want to get your thoughts on in my monologue to kick off the show, I talked a little bit, and I want to play a clip here. I talked a little bit about the way in which these protesters or rally goers, it really depends on the event. Some are more protests, others are more rallies to reopen and what have you. But the way in which the media has been maligning those who are standing up, whether it's because their economic livelihoods are being decimated and these politicians are saying, just trust us, we'll let you know when you can go back, or their liberties are being threatened, maybe constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms, for example. Let's take a listen here. This is the one that most just frustrates me, and it's David Zirin of The Nation on MSNBC. This is cut 2. I want to get your reaction to sort of the attitude of some of the media elite. Take a listen.
It would almost be sort of more direct and open to just go out and chant, let us infect you, let us infect you, because that's what they're saying. They're saying, we're in a bunch, we're not social distancing, we could be passing this virus around just among us right here, now let us come back to work and infect y'all. It's a strange sort of civil rights-ish movement, if that's what they think it is, but it also seems to extend, and you were writing about this week, Dave, to let us have WWE, because WWE is an essential business because people can't watch sports.
Yeah. No, they've gone from all lives matter to no lives matter. These folks are, let's be honest about what they are. They are the Fox News, Nazi Confederate, death cult rump of the Republican Party. And their very existence is a slap in the face, not only to the healthcare workers on the front lines risking their lives every single day, but it's also a slap into the face to the people who are actually dying from this virus in disproportionate numbers, black and brown people. These aren't economically disenfranchised folks. These are small business owners. These are retirees. These are people who want their workers to be sent back to work, not themselves. It's a complete and utter farce. It's an AstroTurf farce. And also, I think it needs to be said, it's also unrepresentative of the Republican Party as a whole. I just saw a poll that said 70% of Republicans want a national stay-at-home order. So this represents nothing except the narrow AstroTurf interests and the hard racist interests that combine and form the modern-day Republican Party.
Fox News, Nazi Confederate, death romp cult, Antonia Okafor. What do you make of that?
Oh, man. I mean, it's really interesting how creative they can get to make everything about race. Everything. Everything about race. Although, we're in Colorado here, and I just love when you go to Boulder, and it's just one of the most progressive areas, right? But it's also one of the whitest areas, right? And they always want to talk about how poor, I am as an African American. So, I was actually at the rally, at the protest on Sunday in Denver, downtown Denver. And first of all, they were definitely following guidelines. Most people were. And then also the fact that it wasn't even harming anyone. The big thing is that it comes down to, if you really are concerned and don't like the fact that governors or mayors might be reopening the economy and allowing people to work to make a living, then you can still stay home. I mean, if you have the opportunity, the savings and everything to stay at home, sure, do that. But let people who you claim to be protecting and to be championing, those people who are the hairstylists who need to get to work, and that's the only way that they can feed their families, the people who are on the lower income side of socioeconomic society, then those people cannot afford to stay at home. They need to work and they need to be out there and they need to reopen America. So yeah, obviously not championing those people who need it the most.
Well, I just look at the attitude there. Oh, these are not economically disenfranchised people. These are small business owners. Who the heck does he think small business owners are but people who've poured their heart, soul, time, sweat, tears, energy, and of course, lots of money, or they got investors who invested in their company and said, sure, I'll give you money and I expect a return on that investment. Just for the small business owners side, they're struggling big league, to use a phrase. And also, we're talking about a lot of people who are not even small business owners, who are workers, who just like, I want to be able to have a livelihood, and I don't feel like I can trust the government to be there for me. And they shouldn't, by the way, trust the government to be there for them.
Right. And they also, a lot of them have principles and don't want to, rely on the government in order to do things like that. That's why they're small business owners. That's why they wanted to, they have this principle, this value in them that they should work for themselves, and that the American dream. My parents are immigrants, and that was what they came here on, is that they have this opportunity to make something themselves and, essentially carve their own destiny and their own path in life. And so we are not trying to have our livelihoods be dictated by what the government says is essential and non-essential. And I love that she used that extreme example. I don't know where she got that from, but most people are not trying to reopen the economy because they want sports back. I'm sure that's a great afterthought, but they really want to just make sure that they are be able to feed their families and essentially just have their own livelihoods and not depend on other people.
And one last point on this, and then we'll shift in particular to the gun rights issues. Antonia Okafor, when I talk with people who want to reopen the economy, so to speak, or reopen society, reopen America, reopen Colorado, it's about more than just the economy. It's not that people expect things will just go back to normal right away, or that they'll even take the initiative to go to a bar or a restaurant or to a game if it's possible to go to it, because they understand that there are risks that they need to process. They also understand, the President Trump and his administration have laid out a 3-phase plan, that this will take time. It's not going to be immediate, and most people don't have the expectation that there will just be a return to normal. And the way that some of these types in the media and some politicians are acting about this is as though people who want to reopen just think there's going to be a switch and boom, everything's going to be back to normal. And that's just not the case.
Right. Yeah. I obviously would have rather that the governors or mayors were not dictating, who is essential and non-essential and who can go to work and at what time.
Sure.
Unfortunately, sometimes I kind of buy into this. There were some talks yesterday about Polis saying, "Oh, we might actually reopen the economy." And me being like, "Oh, great," and like, "Oh, wait, no, he didn't have that authority in the beginning." So it's really concerning because this is unfortunately seems like it's going to set a precedent for what it's going to happen in the future, whatever emergency they come up with, whether it's, the CDC that says that it's a pandemic, right? That we have an epidemic actually of gun violence, right? When are they going to have in the future different national emergencies or state emergencies that they just decide, you know what, you don't need your constitutional rights? And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of people who essentially are buying into this. I don't know where they got that study from the 70% of Republicans who want a national shutdown. But I think that's why it's so important that we don't make ourselves in boxes of we're Democrats or Republicans. We're Americans first, and our actual framework comes from the Constitution, and we need to follow that regardless of what name or letter we have behind our name. So it's important that we stand up. The people who are constitutionalists, the people who are actual conservatives, stand up for what is right, even if it's among our peers, so we don't have this issue in the future.
Again, we're talking with Antonia Okafor. Director of Outreach for Gun Owners of America. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's happening right now, specifically with the issue of our constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms in America. We've seen a lot of different states that have come up in the news. I think Colorado seems to be okay as far as Democratic governors are concerned compared to some others, like maybe Virginia and certain other locations. But give us an overall primer on your sense for where things are at right now.
Yeah, well, it is just like the gun issue. It's always been a state by state issue. For the most part, I'm very thankful that Trump has chosen to stay out of this on the national level when it comes to things like a national shutdown or even telling governors what they have to do. One big thing that President Trump did early on and that GOA was a part of was having him say that gun stores and gun ranges are essential. We have the right, which is a pre-existing right. Not, the Constitution just protects it, but and acknowledges it, that we have a right to keep and bear arms. And so that includes everything that comes with it, that allows us access to be able to actually buy firearms. The national instant checks system, which was down for a lot of this time because of the overload it had when people were rushing to the gun stores to get guns, slowing down from not really instant, to 2 to 3 day waits in Colorado alone. Those are ways that prohibit people from actually having that right to defend themselves and keep and bear arms. And so he actually made that essential. He didn't force governors to do that, but really he's just dictating what the Constitution already says, and making it a watchdog of, hey, if you're not doing this, then you're blatantly defying two different forms of people saying that our Second Amendment rights are very important.
You said pre-existing right, and that's why I say our constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms, because it is the right to defend oneself fundamentally from government, from others. And who knows, I mean, a lot of people were concerned, understandably so, with these shutdowns. Could we have some sort of civil unrest? And you want to be able to protect yourself, your property, and your family, especially when we were getting notices from police departments that they weren't enforcing a lot of the regular day-to-day laws because they were focusing their priorities in a more limited context in order to keep their police officers safe.
Right. When the sheriff's departments are saying, look, we don't consider giving you your permit an essential service right now, so you're going to just have to wait. Yeah, we'll lax it, when it comes to expirations, but majority of people who have rushed to the gun stores, the 2 million firearms sold in March alone of this year. Those people are not able to get the training that they need. They're also not even able to take the firearm outside of their home because they don't have a concealed carry permit and they're not able to. So those are the types of things that they really have to realize that people are actually taking safety into their own hands. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't have much direction right now because of the gun control laws that were already in place before all of this happened, but especially now when the government is dictating when people can actually defend themselves and how they can train afterwards.
Antonia Okafor, a few minutes left with you from Gun Owners of America. I want to play cut 9 here. This is a short one. This is Stephen Colbert, who's doing a late show online. I've been sort of monitoring some of these people, and he went after President Trump for his support of the protesters, for basically saying, hey, it's your right, go out and do so, and so forth. And then after blasting the president for this, Colbert made a little bit of a slight that I think demonstrates a lack of understanding, shall we say, about the Second Amendment when he talked about President Trump's tweet about liberate Virginia. Let's play cut 9 here.
And liberate Virginia and save your great Second Amendment. It is under siege.
Ah, yes. The Second Amendment is so important right now because if you run out of Lysol, you can just shoot your groceries.
The Second Amendment is so important right now because if you run out of Lysol, you can just shoot your groceries. What's going on in Virginia, Antonia? And do you agree with me that he probably doesn't get it?
Yeah, and he's not the only one that I've had the unfortunate interaction with of saying that, yes, the people who are going to get a lot of guns now or get guns in general are the ones who really think that they're going to shoot the coronavirus. with their firearm. Yes, that's what all these new first-time buyers who never even thought about a gun before. And by the way, a lot of them are liberals or progressives rather, who believe that, hey, I'm gonna have to defend myself here. So that one is just absurd, but I've heard it many times. They're just trying to make us look like we are the gun nuts that they want us to be perceived as. So that unfortunately is there. But yeah, in Virginia, I mean, it's become unfortunately, the big example of gun control, at least even just this year. In January, I was at the VCDL rally that they had in the Virginia Capitol. Hundreds of thousands of people there. Don't believe what the media said about that. It was insane and it was beautiful. But unfortunately, it is definitely an example of what happens when people don't get involved early. It started from the people who were actually running and then who got into office that changed a lot of those gun control laws. And the fact that we still have, Governor Northam, who is an avowed, either he was wearing a KKK costume or he was in blackface. Still don't know. He won't, actually admit to either one of those, essentially. But the fact that we have an avowed racist, inside of Virginia is just an example of the history of gun control. It's always been about keeping people who are oppressed, particularly African Americans, particularly women, particularly people who are immigrants or people who have not had their rights protected in the past before. So it's just a perpetual cycle that continues to have different faces, but unfortunately is definitely alive and well in Virginia right now.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Antonia Okafor, Director of Outreach for Gun Owners of America. Thanks so much for joining us, and let's keep vigilant. As Thomas Jefferson said, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Once again, Antonia Okafor joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, Director of Outreach for Gun Owners of America. You just watched a clip from Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel today. You want to catch our live show, and I love your support.
I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of no sense. Yeah.